Now, if you have to eat rice, then there are ways that you can reduce the arsenic in your rice. First, what if I told you that this little guy could hold the key to your brain health, even if you have a gene that increases your risk of dementia? Would you eat this every day? Do you even want to know if you have a gene for dementia? Or would you rather know how to prevent dementia? And that's the dilemma with the ApoE4 test that Chris Hemsworth got. He discovered that he had 2 copies of the ApoE4 gene, which increases his risk of Alzheimer's. Now, 25% of us carry one of these genes, and less than 3% have both copies. I'm all for knowing your data if that information will be helpful. And the thing is, just because you inherit the ApoE4 gene, that doesn't mean you're going to get dementia. In fact, 40% of patients with Alzheimer's don't even have the ApoE4 gene. What does the ApoE4 gene do anyway? Well, it turns out that the gene makes the brain cells trap triglycerides, a type of fat that normally provides energy to cells. So is it really worth knowing your ApoE4 status? Personally, I don't think so, because there's nothing you can do about it. You can't get rid of that gene. However, you can modify lots of other risk factors that have nothing to do with your genes, and possibly even reverse dementia if you can find a treatable root cause. Would you believe that people usually get diagnosed with frontotemporal dementia between the ages of 45 to 65? I have a friend who's literally my age who has dementia. I don't think I'm that old. And we usually think of it as an old person's disease, but not everybody gets dementia as they grow old. I've met plenty of people in their 90s and over 100 who were as sharp as a tack. And those are my role models. I want to be like them. And not necessarily for me, but really for my kids. Do you know how hard it is to take care of someone with dementia? I have a unique perspective because not only am I a physician, but my mom had dementia. She started showing signs several years before other people recognized it. And for many years, nobody believed me. First, she lost her keys one day. She literally called me up, yelled at me over the phone as if I took her keys. She then blamed it on my brother, accusing him of hiding her keys from her. I drove over her house that day to help her look for her keys, which was literally on the floor next to the chair. Now, I don't exactly know why my mom got dementia, but I have my theories. But I do know I eat cruciferous vegetables like number 1, kale, because it's been shown to improve memory. And my favorite kale of all time is the Lactino kale. But like all other cruciferous vegetables, including broccoli, cauliflower, bok choy, they all can help detoxify heavy metals, which accumulate in the brain, lowering IQ scores and increases your rate of getting dementia at a younger age. Here's a list of heavy metals that can accumulate in your brain. Now, these metals, they surround all of us because people have polluted the earth. Hence, it's important to help your own body naturally detox with cruciferous vegetables. Because when you eat cruciferous vegetables, they arm the most important defense system you have, the glutathione redox system. So when you eat heavy metals, they cause your body oxidative stress. And it wouldn't be a problem if your body can handle the oxidative stress. Hence, you gotta power your glutathione redox system because it is the most powerful oxidative stress handler. And every time you eat cruciferous vegetables, they have a molecule in them called sulforaphanes that help you do just that. But that doesn't mean we shouldn't avoid concentrated levels of toxins. Do you know where lead is commonly found in your environment? Now, when I grew up, they still sold leaded gasoline. So lead was basically in the air pollution in Los Angeles, and it would blow in your house on a windy day and settle as dust. And that's why it's important to keep your windows closed on windy days, wash all your produce before you eat it, and keep your home dust-free. Now, the other problem with homes, especially older homes, is lead-based paint. And lead-based paint was used before 1978. Now, when the paint gets old, it chips, right? Well, that chip can fall and can get on the fingers of your little friends, or can get on the soil and contaminate the soil that surrounds your home. The thing is, you don't need a lot of lead to elevate blood lead levels and cause brain damage. And this is one reason why Asians, we don't wear shoes in the home, because dirty shoes bring in dirty dirt with lead. And little feet should not be walking barefoot in the soil or play in the dirt because of the possibility of lead. And nor should you plant an edible garden close to your home. Now, if you're concerned with your dirt, you can always test it for lead. Do you remember ever hearing that you shouldn't cook or drink from the hot water tap, but you should always use a cold water tap? And that's because old homes were made out of lead pipes, and hot water dissolved more lead. So if you need hot water, you collect the cold water and you heat that up. Now, even though I have a newer home and it's no longer made out of lead pipes, I still follow these rules because hot water just dissolves more things than cold water. So I never drink or rinse my mouth with hot water. And if I need hot water, well, I'm just going to heat up the cold water. I also got myself a water filter. And another rule is to let the water run 3 to 5 minutes before using it if you have an older home. Now, if you don't have lead pipes, then it's recommended to let it run 30 to 60 seconds. Now, as a kid, I remember my mom using Roundup. We had a huge garden, and she would periodically get tired of all the insects and go use that Roundup, which is made out of glyphosate. Now, of course, when you're the one spraying it, you're probably getting some on yourself and inhaling it, especially if you're not wearing a mask. Now, I don't think that's the only risk factor for dementia she had, but for sure, glyphosate has been linked to neurodegenerative diseases. And this is why I don't like to spray pesticides in my home, because eventually that residue will get in the air and in the dirt. Now, the reason why my mom couldn't find her keys was because she had so much clutter. And as her dementia got worse, she was unable to keep her house clutter-free. But before she actually lost her keys, she got lost a few times driving to my house several months prior. And she came to my house quite frequently to help me babysit. Now, when my dad was around, he would help my mom navigate. And my dad, he remained sharp as a tack in his old age. And he loved garlic. And that's another reason why I eat garlic daily, which is number 2. Garlic is high in sulfur compounds called allicin, which supports the liver detoxification system, glutathione. Now, garlic also has selenium, which acts as a cofactor for the glutathione redox system as well. And my dad, he swore by his garlic because he never got any colds and he was super healthy and strong as an ox when I grew up. Now, I can verify that he did indeed not get colds, even though I kept bringing home colds from school. And he did indeed love his garlic. He would bring raw garlic bulbs for lunch at work, and he carried these bulbs to all the restaurants that we would go to because they just never gave him enough garlic. And when we go to Chinese restaurants, we would always ask for stir-fried vegetables with garlic, and that still wasn't enough. Now, did you know that during World War II, garlic was known as a Russian penicillin? Because when the Soviets ran out of antibiotics, this is what they used, garlic. Antibiotics weren't actually available until after the 1940s. And what did people do before the 1940s? Well, they used plants. And at the rate that we're accumulating drug resistance, it's going to be in our lifetime to watch these antibiotics disappear in their effectiveness. And we're going to have to go back to plants. But my personal goal is not to rely on antibiotics for my own health. And that's why I eat as much garlic as possible. Garlic has been a worldwide ancient remedy for infections, for colds, for coughs, for joint pains, and skin problems. However, there is a trick to eating garlic. Raw garlic actually burns. So this is not something you want to put on your skin. The end result is not going to be pretty. And my dad tried to train me to eat this garlic raw, but just barely touching my lips, it set my lips on fire. So I am not a fan of raw garlic. And as an adult, I realized garlic has to be eaten with food. I try not to eat this on an empty stomach, and I try very hard to get this in my system every day because it can dampen the overactive immune system while increasing my protective immunity. And apparently that nagging common cold symptoms that make you stay home, well, people who eat garlic reported to suffer 60% less cold symptoms and 70% fewer days down to have a faster recovery. And in fact, when you eat garlic, the anti-infective elements actually can permeate in your respiratory tract, making it unpleasant for germs to live. But not all garlic are equal. If you want your allicin, then you can't deep fry your garlic or bake it on high heat. Stir frying and boiling will also reduce the allicin. And the best way to preserve the most allicin is to roast your garlic in its own peel, and then you can smash it over a piece of a whole grain toast and it'll be super tasty. Now, cooking takes a lot of effort, and I think that's why a lot of people don't cook. And I noticed as my mom's dementia advanced, her cooking skills also diminished. A lot of it was from just getting out of practice because she basically thought it was cheaper to buy pre-made food. So then why spend the effort? And I believe her eating out actually sped up her dementia because restaurant food is usually poor in quality, higher in salt, higher in sugar, all contributing to a worse blood pressure, which means you have less blood flow, which means your brain cells don't get the nutrition that they need. And when she did cook, well, she had a difficult time remembering how she should do that. And she was an excellent cook. She cooked for us for decades. For holidays, she would easily whip up 30 dishes and it would be just to feed the 5 of us. And for the longest time, my dad, he refused to eat at restaurants because my mom was such a good cook. I always just thought he was cheap, and he was, but that actually protected his metabolism and his brain cells. And as my mom's dementia advanced, she would actually burn her food. And she always laughed it off, saying she just wasn't paying attention. Now, to be clear, her symptoms slowly happened over years. And this is why it's important to start eating for your brain health today. If you look around the world, there are certain cultures that have lower dementia rates, like India, who are also one of the highest consumers of turmeric. Now, turmeric is the most researched spice in the world. If you have arthritis, abnormal blood sugars, if you're getting radiation for chemotherapy, then you may want to look into turmeric, as there are lots of published data in how turmeric can help those conditions. It helps with inflammation, helps with losing weight, and your DNA. Turmeric contains curcumin and curcuminoids that exert powerful anti-inflammatory effects shown to help DNA repair from people who were poisoned with arsenic. Now, you should know about arsenic in your food and water. Arsenic is a natural mineral in nature and contaminates soil and water and potentially the air that you breathe, especially if you're breathing air with car exhaust. Now, it's even worse during volcanic eruptions or mining. If you live in the city or countryside, besides fossil fuels, insecticides, herbicides, glass, electronics, paint, metal adhesives, wood preservatives, paper, textiles, pigments, ammunition, all these industries use arsenic. Now, arsenic is also used as a feed additive and in the pharmaceutical industry. Now, if you smoke or if you live with a smoker, well, you're inhaling arsenic. So arsenic, it surrounds all of us. Now, I have a friend who's actually a construction worker, and he loved just remodeling everything. He used to remodel his home to perfection. He would print professional signs. He never took any precautions with the paints and chemicals that he was touching and inhaling. He also has dementia. Now, I don't know if it's from arsenic, but I know man-made chemicals are all toxic, whether they color our walls, color our toys, or they color our foods. Now, some will say arsenic is all natural, and we are all exposed to tiny amounts. And that's the thing. It should be even tinier. No one needs to collect it. It's not money. So my goal is to be exposed to the least amount possible. So I go out of my way to avoid certain foods and water sources that will concentrate arsenic.
Hi friends, I am so thrilled that you want to take charge of your health and take charge of your food. Now, I know nutrition can be complex, but it doesn't have to be. And I'm here to support you in this lifelong journey. So if you point your camera app to this QR code, it'll take you to a link for a free handout that I created just for you. And if you like it, if you want to see other handouts, please go to the link in my show notes, and then you can leave me your feedback on what I could do to help you in your journey. Okay, back to the video now.
But unfortunately, many of us blindly eat and drink, and we're exposing ourselves to chemicals like arsenic. And the only real way to know is to get your levels tested, unless you have symptoms. In the 1990s, UNICEF built shallow tube wells in Bangladesh to bring the people clean water. And the water looked great. Definitely wasn't muddy. But arsenic is invisible, and millions of people suffered from arsenic poisoning drinking that clean well water. Well, it turns out groundwater is naturally contaminated with arsenic. They forgot to test the water. Have you tested your drinking water? There are different forms of arsenic, inorganic and organic forms. Inorganic forms is definitely carcinogenic. There's no acceptable amount of inorganic arsenic. They contaminate the water. And if you use well water, that needs to be tested for arsenic. Now, there's just no way to avoid water because water supports life. And the average person needs roughly at least 2 liters or a gallon a day of water. But if it's hot or having fevers, if you're losing more water from breathing harder, sweating more, having diarrhea, or frequent urination, or you're healing from burns and wounds, you're going to need more water. We should all be making sure that our water is clean. And the only way to do that is to get yourself the right filters. And unfortunately, you can't always trust your government to take care of that because they make mistakes. Water is the largest source of arsenic, and anything that needs water to grow can also concentrate arsenic. And this is why there are high amounts of organic arsenic in seafood and rice. I ate a ton of seafood and rice growing up, but the seafood that was around when I grew up, that isn't the same seafood that is sold on the market today because there's so many more toxins. Literally, our sea life are swimming in a giant toilet bowl. And on top of that, they have to worry about plastic. And it's not just the sea turtles mistakenly eating plastic bags for jellyfish. You're actually drinking plastic every time you drink from that bottled water or when you drink or eat anything from the ocean. We basically need to globally reduce our plastic use. So I don't need seafood and rice because I don't want to be collecting arsenic, but I understand rice is a staple grain around the world and it is delicious stuff. And my mom also spent her whole life eating rice. Now, I don't know how much of that contributed to her dementia because we never got any arsenic levels. However, compared to all the other grains, white rice is probably also the least nutritious grain to eat. And I remember she would just eat white rice with soy sauce. And that's where I got my love for rice until I realized it's pretty much eating just sugar. And I know there are lots of publications on how you can reverse diabetes and obesity and high blood pressure and high cholesterol just by eating rice. But it's such a nutritiously deficient food that you have to take a lot of supplements to do it. And on top of that, rice absorbs 10 times more arsenic than any other grain. And the fact that we have so many other grains to choose from, well, I'd rather spend my valuable real estate in my stomach filling it up with something else but rice. As my mom's dementia progressed, she even lost her appetite and became more isolated. And that was really hard to watch because my mom, she loved traveling and going out and trying new foods and to be amongst friends. In fact, when we were discussing about how it was unsafe for her to live on her own, some of her friends offered to stay with her. But the problem is all her friends were also elderly. And maybe we should have taken their offer and maybe she would have listened to them and be a happier person with them. But I'm not sure because, she kept changing her mind and she would have dramatic mood swings. And I was afraid that her friends could barely take care of themselves, let alone take care of my mom. I insisted that her doctors try to find a reversible cause and it was discovered that she was anemic and peeing out microscopic amounts of blood. And ultimately, she saw a urologist and gynecologist, and we found out that she had a fibroid that could be the root cause of her anemia, which then could lead to these memory problems. So I convinced my mom to get the fibroid removed. And unfortunately, that was the beginning of her rapid decline in her memory because she got a multi-drug resistant urinary tract infection after the procedure. Unfortunately, things got out of hand because my mom didn't speak up. And that was a problem with dementia. She apparently had several days of pain, but she didn't want to tell anybody. And she figured that since it hurts to pee, she'll just stop drinking and then she won't have the pain anymore. Now, this makes perfectly good sense, except when you don't drink, you don't pee, and you don't improve your urinary tract infection or your immunity. In fact, it gets worse. So her urinary tract infection blossomed into full-blown sepsis. She nearly died. And I thank God that he sent me to check on my mom that day. And that was the day she was septic. When I picked her up, she looked really tired and something was off. Her heart was racing and she had a fever. So I drove her to the emergency room just in time before her blood pressure tanked. And ultimately, she stayed in the hospital for about 5 days. Her dementia accelerated downhill over the course of that time. And she was never the same person again. And honestly, I thought about that time in her life over and over. And I strongly believe that if my mom had stayed with me, or if she would have allowed an assistant to stay with her, we could have intervened earlier to have prevented that outcome. And this is why I strongly encourage people to find a helper or a friend or a family member to live with early in the course of aging if you want to maintain your quality of life. Now, if you have to eat rice, then there are ways that you can reduce the arsenic in your rice. First, you got to rinse it until it's clear, and then you boil it, you throw away most of that water, and then you add in new water. But in the meantime, eat turmeric daily. Turmeric won't be able to take away the arsenic, but it can significantly help your body repair from the damaging effects of arsenic on your DNA. Now, there's a particular molecule in turmeric, curcumin, that is known to have strong antioxidant properties, and it can help neutralize free radicals generated by arsenic exposure. And this reduces some of the oxidative stress and cellular damage caused by arsenic. Now, arsenic exposure can trigger inflammation in the body, which can lead to a higher risk of skin, bladder, and kidney cancer. And when you eat turmeric, you get curcumin, which has been studied for its anti-inflammatory effects, which can mitigate the inflammation associated with arsenic poisoning. Now, arsenic is primarily metabolized in the liver, and curcumin supports the liver to help the liver in its attempt to detoxify the oxidative stress caused by arsenic. Curcumin also interacts with your gut microbiome. It has prebiotic effects and can promote the growth and activity of your gut microbiome, keeping those harmful bacteria down. Turmeric has also been shown to have antimicrobial properties against certain pathogenic bacteria and fungi. Now, after you eat turmeric or take a curcumin supplement, it doesn't last long in your body, maybe a couple hours, because the liver rapidly breaks it down. Hence, people have paired spices with turmeric like black pepper, ginger, cumin, cinnamon. Basically, this is curry. When you eat turmeric or curcumin, most of it is fed to your gut microbiome because it is difficult to absorb. Now, you can enhance its absorption by heating turmeric to break down its cellular matrix and mixing it with some oil. Now, when my siblings, they finally understood the severity of my mom's dementia, we started giving her more foods that would reduce inflammation, like green tea, number 3. My dad, he drank tea his entire life, and he drank a lot of it all day long. Now, his tea mug was rich with bioactive compounds, primarily catechins, which is a type of flavonoid. It had some caffeine and L-theanine. Now, catechins are strong antioxidants to serve as brain protectants. Epigalactocatechin gallate, EGCG, is a powerful antioxidant found in green tea that can actually cross the blood-brain barrier to protect your brain cells from the oxidative stress of free radicals. And this reduces your risk of neurodegenerative diseases like Alzheimer's and Parkinson's. Now, the caffeine in the tea is a double-edged sword. If you drink it too late, it can keep you up. It can also make you anxious if you drink too much of it. But in proper amounts, it actually improves brain function by increasing the release of neurotransmitters like dopamine and norepinephrine. And this enhances your mood, your alertness, and concentration. Now, green tea isn't a modern invention. It's an ancient food. Japanese samurais, they used to drink green tea to mentally prepare for battle. It gave them a calming effect because of the L-theanine, an amino acid that promotes relaxation without drowsiness. And it does this by increasing levels of calming neurotransmitters like GABA while enhancing alpha brainwave activity, which is associated with a state of relaxed focus. And when you combine it with caffeine, L-theanine improves mental clarity and it sustains attention. And some studies suggest that EGCG and other polyphenols in green tea may promote neurogenesis, the growth of new neurons, and strengthen synaptic connections. This, in turn, improves memory and learning abilities. Did you know that no matter what age, some of our neurons can still grow if it's in the right environment? We definitely encourage my mom to drink green tea every day. Her sleep cycle was off. Her dementia was interfering in her sleep, where she would stay up late at night, past midnight, browsing on the internet, clicking and downloading things she shouldn't, because she always got a virus on her computer. In fact, once she was visiting my home, and we just had bought a brand new Dell computer, and she insisted that she wasn't going to do anything to mess it up. Well, when she left, I couldn't get the computer to work because she basically downloaded a virus. Now, I try to keep my mom from drinking green tea past the morning because I didn't want to interfere with her sleep even more. But I think my mom had a high caffeine tolerance because she drank black coffee pretty much most of her adult life. And green tea only has a third of the caffeine in a cup of coffee. But because of her mood swings I was looking for things that could keep her calm. She would go through bouts of extreme cycles. One minute she was enraged and blaming you for her rotten life, and then the next minute, it was as if she never said anything. And her mood swings were very unpredictable. Now, once my mom, she got upset with one of my siblings that she literally walked away on foot, and they actually lost her. No one could find her for hours. But thank God, a kind stranger noticed that she was just wandering around the neighborhood. So she picked her up, asked my mom where she wanted to go, and she chose the supermarket. And she never told anybody that she had any children, even though we tried to call her cell phone. Finally, the last time the cell phone rang, she handed that phone to the stranger who answered it. And we are so thankful to God that he sent an angel to help my mom. And that's the thing with dementia. It changes your personality and your mood becomes unpredictable. And I don't wish for my children to have to go through that journey with me. And that's really why I try very hard to keep myself physically and mentally healthy. Signs of dementia actually start happening at least 18 years before that official diagnosis. It seems like it just creeps in, but it actually slowly changes your personality. It's so slow that family members, they're usually unaware of the symptoms, or they're just in denial. Do you have problems with your memory? Are you forgetting names, or maybe your tasks or appointments? Maybe you don't sleep well. Mommy brain? Or maybe you aren't exercising. I've suffered from sleep deprivation, been a mommy several times around, and my work requires lots of sleepless nights. But I actively work every day to keep my memory sharp. In fact, I believe I am a better learner now than I was in college. And what's the difference? My effort. Every day I eat a ton of anthocyanins like number 4, blueberries. And did you know that blueberries are also pretty safe for dogs too? Blueberries have been shown to improve memory. And I'm not surprised. Any food that reduces your blood pressure, improves your cholesterol, it lowers your blood sugar, reduces DNA damage. Well, it can't help but to be good for you and for your brain. But not all blueberries are made equally. Sometimes when I'm at the store, I've seen blueberries like fresh ones that are 4 times the normal size of a frozen blueberry. It was kind of like a small grape. And I usually avoid those foods since most of the anthocyanins are on the skin or they're in the seeds. And this is why I stick to buying wild blueberries. Now, I used to think that blueberries had the highest anthocyanin concentration in fruit, but nope, I was wrong. Black currants, number 5, actually has more anthocyanins than blueberries. But Americans confuse black currants with raisins that are called currants. And raisins are just dried grapes. And they even named raisins Zante currants, which are still dried grapes. But real currants like the black currant, they come from fresh berries from the Ribes genus family. And they have a tart, tangy, sweet, and unique flavor that is distinctive from raisins. Initially, they were native to Northern and Central Europe, Asia, and New Zealand. And did you know that black currants were once banned in the United States due to its role in spreading white pine blister rust? For many states now, restrictions have been lifted, and we're growing our own black currants now in the Pacific Northwest as well as the Northeast. And believe it or not, there's actually another berry that has more anthocyanin than black currants, and that's number 6, black raspberries. Now, I still haven't found any fresh black raspberries, but I did find a farm that sold black currants, but the fake kind, not the real kind. But in that journey, I discovered black raspberries. Now, I think anthocyanins are so important that I honestly make it my mission every day to get in thousands of milligrams of anthocyanins from my food. I'm basically trying to make up for all those years I lived in the dorm and ate junk food through medical school and residency and fellowship. And that whole adventure was over a decade of my life. Black raspberries, they are unique. They are native to the Pacific Northwest. Then the next time I go, I'm going to find a farm with black raspberries. And in the meantime, I'm just going to eat the freeze-dried stuff I found on the internet. And that's still pretty good because that's how a lot of the studies with black raspberry powders were done to find clinical benefit. Even though it's messy, it's quite tasty. I add it to my smoothies and I put it on top of fruits or I weave it to any dessert. But somehow I still can't get my kids to eat it because it's a powdered mess. But they will take supplements, so I spend my time packing that black raspberry powder into tiny capsules. Now, I know it takes a lot of effort, but I believe even a little bit of those anthocyanins are better than no anthocyanins. And usually I would prefer all my berries fresh, unless we're talking about number 7, the elderberry. And apparently unripened fresh elderberries actually have cyanide, so it's not something you want to eat. And some people in California learned the hard way drinking fresh elderberry juice. Elderberries are another ancient fruit. They have almost 4 times the amount of anthocyanins compared to a wild blueberry. And so this is why I eat elderberries every day in my supplement. And of course, if you want to know what I take, I have a link in the show notes below. And many cultures around the world, from ancient Egypt to ancient Rome, they used to use the sacred elderberry plant medicinally. It was a remedy for illnesses, and it also helped them to ward off evil spirits. In the European folklore, the elder tree was believed to have protective and magical properties against evil spirits. But then on the other hand, they also believed it caused people bad things. Did you ever watch Harry Potter? Did you know that Dumbledore's elder wand is made from an elder tree? Have you heard of Hippocrates? He's an ancient Greek physician who actually documented using elderberry to treat various ailments. And elderberries were used as a diuretic, a laxative, a fever reducer to treat respiratory infections and skin problems. Isn't it amazing how a tiny little plant could do all that? And it's probably because it's packed with immune-boosting anthocyanins, vitamins, and minerals. And there's even clinical research to show that it can help reduce cold symptoms. Did you know that your brain is 60% fat? But it's not just any fat. You actually need critical omega-3 and omega-6 fatty acids that are required to form the myelin sheath. It's the stuff that insulates your neurons so that they can effectively communicate with one another. If you don't have myelin sheaths, it's like having naked electrical wires in your home. Number 1, you would probably electrocute yourself. And number 2, it's probably not going to be an efficient way to conduct electricity. And your brain, it works the same way. It's a giant tangle of electrical wires called neurons. And if you want that to work, you're going to have to provide it insulation. And that's where omega-3 fatty acids come in. But I bet you have plenty of omega-6 fatty acids. Most Americans overeat an abundance of omega-6 fatty acids. That's basically seed oils. And excess omega-6 fatty acids, they can actually be pro-inflammatory, and it interferes with the amount of omega-3s that you're going to have. Now, the ideal ratio is around 4-1, omega-6s to omega-3s. But Americans are currently eating 7 times more omega-6 oils, and they're seriously deficient in omega-3s. And do you know which animals have the most omega-3s? Ocean animals. So if you eat seafood, that'll help you get omega-3s, or you can eat flax seeds and walnuts. And have you noticed that those animals are always on the move? And did you know that some whales live to over 100 years old? And I bet you some of it is because of the exercise that they do. And it works the same way in people. If you exercise at least 30 minutes, 5 times a week, you can significantly lower your risk of dementia. Unfortunately, most Americans aren't even doing just that. If you have a step counter, track your steps. You know, the goal is to hit 10,000 steps every day. It should be above that. But we're not even close. We're not even at 5,000. I think we're barely touching 3,000. And I'm just as part of the problem too before. I was not doing my steps. I wasn't tracking them. And when I started tracking them, I realized I was doing such a terrible job that I've been striving to be better and better and improve at my steps. So this year I'm walking 1,000 or 2,000 more steps than on an average day compared to last year. But you know, as you do more exercise, you're going to get more dehydrated. And did you know that the brain is actually 73% water? If you're dehydrated, that'll significantly affect your memory. Besides exercise, if it's a hot day, if you are outdoors and under the sun sweating, or if you're having a fever or breathing hard, all these can contribute to dehydration. And when you're sick, you have urinary frequency or you're having diarrhea, that's even worse. So if you're dehydrated, you're not going to be able to keep your lights on up here. And this is why you have to make sure you're drinking the right kind of fluids, because sometimes drinking just plain water isn't the best option. And if you want to learn more about that, check out the next video.